Konami sure has changed. I've been talking about them a lot lately, with Contra Rogue Core as one of the worst of 2019, or the TMNT and Simpsons beat-em-ups back in the day. It's hard to believe that Konami went from a company so prolific they had to make up a fake publishing label to get around Nintendo's game limit to whatever they do now. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Patchy Slot, Frogger, and Toy Town, I guess. The 2010s were pretty awful for Konami on a game and human rights front, but before all of this, things were pretty alright. If you asked me in the 90s or 2000s what my favorite game publishers were, they'd be Square Enix, Sega, Capcom, and of course, Konami. The four powerhouse studios with tons of awesome franchises, one-off games, and each with a distinct style. All of them with so many video games that there's bound to be hidden gems and things time has completely forgotten. We've already talked about Squeenix at this point, so let's talk about Konami, my side girl. Longtime watchers know I love me some Rocket Knight and Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, so we'll pass on those today. But don't worry, there's 300 other games we could talk about, especially considering in the early 90s, Konami would snatch up licenses like a bird circling prey. They were LJN, but good. That TMNT game on the NES wasn't that bad, it's just misunderstood. So yo, it's Austin, and today we're gonna be talking about a handful of forgotten Konami games. Now, I covered Psy Girls in a video a little while ago, and a couple of y'all were like, yo, do more of that kind of stuff, so here we are. However, Konami has a bunch of franchises that have so many games that a couple of them are forgotten about. Let's do it. For example, Contra. I don't think there's a soul out there who plays video games who doesn't know what a Contra is. However, it seems like just about everyone, including Konami, has completely forgot about the last 25 years of it. Yeah, even the Anniversary Collection that came out earlier this year only has 5 actual games included. Half of them are just variations or Probotector. So 1987 to 94. There's a bunch of games missing there, but fair, because most of them range from okay to the big suck. But the one we're looking at today was brought to us by Appaloosa Interactive, the people behind classics like South Park, Echo the Dolphin, and of course, Tales in the Music Maker. Sega Pico Video win? Appaloosa would be responsible for 2 games with the Contra name, Legacy of War and C, the Contra Adventure. You might notice that, hey, this is 3D. That's right, Konami entrusted a different studio to be the first in attempt to convert their wildly popular cult franchise into 3D. The one notorious for its difficulty, the one that popularized the Konami code, and well, it's pretty bad. You can tell right away too. Let me just hit start. Oh, we're going, okay. This is Legacy of War, an oft-forgotten Contra game and the first of 2 not to be released in Japan. The other being this one. The other one made by Appaloosa. Good job, guys. But what's wrong with it? Well, if we look beyond the ugly scaling sprites and vomit-looking and inducing 3D backgrounds, it tried to be a dual-stick shooter before there were 2 sticks. If you whip out something like Robotron 2084, it's totally playable because of the limited buttons needed, but Legacy of War has you press a button in order to lock in a position to shoot in while moving. That's something other games like Hardcore did prior, but they didn't have the whole third dimension part. Aiming to shoot stuff in these levels isn't particularly fun, especially when you can't really tell where to aim when jumping. Also, there's 3D platforming. You're gonna die. Or, fading away and respawning is too hard to program, so just make the number go down until game over. You got no invincibility frames in this either. In classic Contra, you'll take a hit, get flown back dramatically, and then respawn a few seconds later, iframes and all. Legacy of War is like bam, 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 4 lives gone. 4 in a second. So get good at dodging or turn on the cheats. Oh, sick. Good job. If you're playing on an easier difficulty and you get to a certain point of the game, it calls you soft and tells you to try again. Yeah, okay. Legacy of War carries the Contra name and is a difficult game for sure, but it's not a fun difficult. Overcoming a challenge in the Alien Wars or Super C gives you this aha moment of relief, but Legacy of War feels more like you just paid your taxes.
You have been absorbed into my brain.
This villain sounds like he belongs in a Disney Star Wars film. Also, he won't go away. For an entire level, you're barely able to see the ground because his face takes up the entire screen. Great idea. This and Appaloosa's other Contra game, the Contra Adventure, were not received well and have been left in the bowels of history for a good reason. I'll talk about this one another time, but let's go ahead and step away from the game whose best quality is an unlockable Pac-Man clone. I mentioned earlier that Konami was all about the licensed games, so I think it's time for us to revisit Tiny Toon Adventures. A million years ago, in my second Sonic Clones video, I talked about Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster's Hidden Treasure, and I was happy to see that it stood the test of time. Like a lot of Konami's 16-bit games, it was good stuff. Well, besides the crippling difficulty and weird lack of subtitle on the title screen. In 3.5 years, Konami made 9 Tiny Toon video games. That's a lot, but we're gonna be sticking with the Sega Genesis today so I can introduce a game that kept me busy for weeks as a kid, Tiny Toon Adventures Acme All-Stars. I've got a big soft spot for the casual sport game. Anytime Mario decides to take a venture into some new sport or Olympic, I'm always there day one. If there's a WrestleMania, the game, Everybody's Golf, Rocket League, or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater nearby, consider me in. I think a lot of this love started with Acme All-Stars, one heck of a Genesis hidden gem. But it's not just one sport. We got basketball, we got soccer, we got bowling, we got an obstacle course, and we got whack-a-mole. Montana, yeah. That one. Following your standard video game plot logic, the Acme University decides to host a soccer and basketball tournament, and all the Tiny Toons are super excited to play to determine who has the best team. Yeah, no prize or anything. Like you could convince children to engage in a sport for the prestige. Kids like Fun Dip or whatever sugar shit. All-Stars doesn't have a lot of depth to the single player. You go through the story, playing through levels, alternating between sports, and some of them aren't as robust as others. But there's a large selection of characters with their own individual abilities for each game, and it makes for a pretty entertaining split screen time. I think it shines the brightest in the basketball part. Dunking, tossing, layups, passing all feel good enough, especially in a licensed kids game, and it's something I'll go back to anytime. It's not NBA Jam, but you can't touch the GOAT. This one's pretty solid, and Konami has a ton of other licensed Tiny Toon Adventures games, and considering this was pretty much my entire world for like a year, I'm sure we'll get to the others. But if there's one game that I think is often forgotten about that I think's a must-play, it's Acme All-Stars. I mean, what other games let you do sick dunks with Mo f***ing Plucky Duck? What about that time Konami tried to make a Katamari Damacy clone? Yeah, you heard me right. This is Tornado Outbreak. 2009 was a pretty empty year for Konami. With the exception of the arcade, mobile, and portable console lineup, all they really released this year was like Silent Hill Shattered Memories and Saw the video game. It's a big year. But also out was a little American-developed game called Tornado Outbreak. I had literally never heard of this one until recently, so it was my surprise to find out that it's actually pretty okay. In Tornado Outbreak, you control this little guy, and you gotta use the force of tornadoes to destroy things and grow in size. Simple enough. You can dash, you can jump, you can do chain combos with these fire dudes you gotta pick up, but mostly you're just gonna tornado. Tornade?
BitTorrent.
You just like move by objects until you're big enough to like rip them out of the ground. It's not quite as interactive as your Katamari due to needing less of a hands-on bumping approach, but it still holds its ground, especially when you get massive. Problem is, Tornado Outbreak is a technical mess. I'm playing the 360 version and it's running like butt. The frames are hanging out in the lower 20s when it's at its best, and when things get messy, it's real rough. It's weird considering this game's kind of ugly. A concept like this doesn't really need a story to keep things moving forward, but for some reason, Loose Cannon Studios decided to make it super dramatic. Instead of being just like a loose tornado, you are Zephyr, a young wind warrior. Your goal is to provide a suitable atmosphere on planets to make sure they don't die out. However, there's an evil force known as Omegaton, also known as global warming, who's attempting to destroy planets and dry them out with the sun. Your senpai, Captain Nimbus, dies immediately, and you have to become a leader, assume control of the Wind Warriors, and take back the atmosphere while fighting against climate control. And it's real dry. A lack of fun music and story charm really sucks the fun out of Tornado Outbreak sales, and that's a shame because I think it could have been really neato. I think if you fix the technical stuff, you'd have a decent Katamari clone, and who doesn't want a Katamari clone? But you can't fix this.
We were too fast for the attack, but there's no question who sent it. The fire.
sleepy. What about that one time someone took a beloved series and turned it into a subpar fighting game? No, not that one. Or that one. Aha! This one.
What? I get a present? Okay, I'll take your test.
Oh no. What did you do? After Order of Ecclesia came out in 2008, I guess Konami ran out of ideas for Castlevania. That game is still one of the best the series has to offer, and they should have just kept expanding it with that, but instead of moving forward, it would be like ports, weird multiplayer things, a complete modern reboot of the franchise with Hideo Kojima producing That Was Just a God of War clone, and of course, pachinko. But somewhere in the middle of all that would be Castlevania Judgment, a Wii exclusive that both Konami and fans of the series seem to want to forget, but I'm here to ruin that. I think Judgment is most famous for its creative redesigns. Now, Castlevania as a whole isn't afraid to see a different artist's take on its characters, and if you were to ask me who can draw real good, it's Takeshi Obata. His work with Hikaru no Go, Platinum End, and Death Note is instantly recognizable and has incredible detail not seen in a lot of manga. Heck, this dude mentored Yusuke Murata, my Ice Shield 21 boy. However, greased up leather daddy Simon Belmont, Shota Eric Lecard, and whatever they did with Carmilla isn't quite what I was thinking. These designs are so over the top. All the Belmonts have massive crucifixes melded into the back of all their clothes that glow with an awesome power anytime you use a super attack. That's fun and all, but more importantly, this game is rough. Whenever someone says Wii fighting game, it's probably Tatsunoko vs. Capcom that comes to mind. However, Konami teamed up with developer Aiding, some of the dudes that worked on Bloody Roar and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. What? I'm just gonna blame this on Konami then. Judgment is a 3D fighting game that has more in common with Power Stone than a Street Fighter. You run around the map and can collect power-ups and hearts Castlevania style in order to use sub-weapons in combat. However, you can't combo real good in this one. Because they designed this to be played on a standard Wii and nunchuck controller, you only really have one normal attack strand, which you do by doing this.
Only YouTubers do this!
You can play on a classic or GameCube controller, but let's just say if you search up Castlevania Judgment combo exhibition videos, you aren't gonna get much. There's a few ways to play here. We've got your standard arcade and versus modes, a castle mode, where you pick a character and go through a Vania-like map room by room completing challenges. This is where you get accessories like the pirate hat or sunglasses, which, by the way, are the first thing you unlock, and they just clip straight through Eric's face. Konami, what did you do to my boy? Lastly, there's the story mode, which is where all of the wonderfully dumb dialogue comes from. Let's be real, there's something charming about fighting game story modes, especially when they go full cheese.
They're huge.
Will you stop? These things only get in the way.
How can you say that? Those are a sacred gift.
Poorly mixed monologues about destiny while loud metal plays in the background, certain bosses saying the same line in quick succession when they spam attacks.
Are you looking? Your tricks are useless. Where are you looking?
I love this jank. It feels human, tangible, like I could make this game, but Castlevania Judgment's no fun to play. I think Aiding oversimplified all the mechanics for the sake of having it on the Wii, and it shows, especially when boss fights against Dracula feel so, I don't know, limited and awful. If Konami wanted to make a Wii Castlevania, they should have just ported Castlevania the arcade. Just let me swing a Wiimote whip. Be way better. Judgment isn't the worst Castlevania game. That honor probably goes to this one Nokia cell phone game I played 100 years ago, but it is the one that makes me think of Chippendales. Still better than Captain N though. Some concepts are inherently cursed. If this video hasn't made you aware by now, Konami's done a lot of reboots of many franchises that have gone the way of the dodo, but there's one classic icon who has never had a game changer since his original incarnation. Let's talk about Frogger. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Left 4 Dead, Don't Starve, and Frogger all have something in common. Survival. The need to outlast what faces you, be it 99 others, a horde of zombies, or fucking traffic. A concept straight out of the 80s arcades, Frogger was a quarter-munching hit that is simple enough to stand the test of time. But you might be surprised to learn that he's gotten like 32 sequels. If you've played any of these, it was probably the original Frogger or 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 1. These weren't made by Konami, but instead Hasbro, and were about what you'd expect. I remember Swampy's Revenge being pretty alright, but I've been wrong before. So let's hop over to the early 2000s. See this Frogger right here? Honestly, Done with it. Give him yellow cargo shorts, a brown vest, white graphic tee combo with like a picture of a crossed out 18-wheeler on it. What you got against the working man, Frogger? Yeah, that's right. Now let's make him bipedal because that's normal and not at all terrifying. And we gotta top it off with a voice. It's 2001 after all. How about this one?
This can't be the only jambalaya being served, Lumpy.
Oh no.
This is Frogger the Great Quest, and the first Konami-made sequel to the franchise since the original. I don't know who out there asked for this or how many people went through the process of making this a thing that exists, but thank you.
I just have to find me a princess somewhere. Can you help me find a princess whose kiss will turn me into a prince?
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our plot. They may as well have called this game Frogger's Great Quest to Smash, because this is literally what we're doing. In a reversal of the old fairy tale where you kiss a frog to find true love, Frogger wants to kiss a princess to become human and make his bipedalness stand out a little less, but that might be a little tough considering how Cajun everyone is.
I know stars make your skin crawl, I guarantee it.
Can you understand this? Cause I can understand all of this. Now look, I'm Cajun through and through. I got Tonys in my veins. I was moderately happy that the Saints won the Super Bowl once. I have boudin balls like 5 times a year and EAUX is pronounced O. You might say I'm comfortable in a swamp, just like Frogger and his family. It's nice to have representation as the Cajun side of the spectrum's like Gambit and Bill. But now I can put good old Frogger up there with him.
I wish I may, I wish I must find a princess before I bust.
Frogger, calm down.
Come to daddy.
Is this illegal? Plain and simple, The Great Quest is a 3D platform that actually predates Jak and Daxter and most platformers on the PS2. Am I saying that Frogger was pushing the envelope? Yes? You can see all the effort too. Check out this sick animation. Combat is hilariously bad in this one. You'll run into enemies and have to use your frog foo on them, but how do I explain this? It locks you into a position and just kind of wails slowly and awkwardly, and maybe sometimes you or the enemy gets hit. It feels like I'm looking at and playing a giant glitch, especially when I can just take items out of chests that are closed. You have to find an item that these bees give you at some point, but if you accidentally smack one of them, they all attack at the same time and the frame rate's like, bye-bye. Also, there's a bunch of Star Wars references. The first time Frogger sees a girl and he's ready to kiss her, she's like, I'm not the one you're looking for, and he does the thing. Also, there's that one time Frogger goes deep into a cave to fight death himself, and when he slays it, the mask breaks open, revealing himself? What? Frogger the Great Quest is hilarious, and I don't know if that's what they were going for. It's 3 hours of jank, not the good kind, but bad enough to have a big laugh. Also, when you win, Frogger gets accepted into Smash and looks like he's trying to hide something. Nice. Next game.
Let's end today with a little Patreon request by Mr. Nova Force. He actually asked me to cover something that I've had a little bit of time with as a kid, so I was eager to revisit it. This is Shadow of Destiny, or as everyone who isn't American in the world calls it, Shadow of Memories.
I didn't appreciate Shadow of Destiny as a kid. Even though I had access to different platforms, I mostly stuck to the platformers, RPGs, shooty jumpy kind of games. However, Sega Shenmue brought me into a different world where something could feel more like a movie and still be a video game. It was my first real dive into the adventure genre. Even though it's goofy as hell and has an uncanny valley level close to Twin Peaks these days, in the 2000s, it was Scorsese. So I picked up Shadow of Destiny expecting the same thing, but was disappointed when I couldn't punch. It was the exact opposite actually, because in Shadow of Destiny, you just die a lot. Anyone ever watched Yu Yu Hakusho? Because that's exactly how this starts. You take control of Ike Kush and you're caught in an unfortunate stabbing accident, waking up in purgatory. Here, you run into a mysterious, demonic-looking dude who Ike immediately assumes is some kind of devil.
You're the big S, the devil.
The big S, apparently. Also, this voice acting.
I don't want to die yet. Please, help me. I guess this is as far as I go. Today is a good day to quit.
Beautiful.
The first time I saw Shadow of Destiny, I was like, whoa, graphics. Graphic, because only the main character looks good. Some of these NPCs look permanently like Arnold in Total Recall. They sound awful too.
Life is so boring, isn't it? Anything I can do for you?
So this mysterious dude, voiced by none other than Mario, by the way, gives Ike a little iPad that allows him to travel back in time at key moments.
What reason is there to procrastinate? You either just die here and now, or you prevent it.
That's because Shadow of Destiny is a time-traveling murder mystery adventure game. And as a kid, I gave up on it a few hours in because I couldn't just turn around and stab the dude that kept stabbing me. 12-year-old logic. But picking it up now, I've gotta say, Shadow of Destiny, or Memories, or whatever you wanna call it, is a really underrated and creative game from Konami. It combines the urgency you feel with something like Majora's Mask with the puzzle-laden nature of a King's Quest where you could die at any moment. In order to figure out how to survive your impending attack, you gotta travel back in time and find a way to avert it. But time still ticks forward in the present, so you gotta be punctual and smart about it. Just don't be like me and touch yourself only to explode the space-time continuum into a million shards of light. Don't do that. Most games with time travel have it there merely as a plot point, where it's like, I've come from the future to help you save the day. Shadows of Destiny, however, has you flipping between different timelines trying to figure out how to protect yourself. For example, at some point, a killer's waiting behind a tree to get you, so you literally go back 500 years in time and tell that dude planting the tree to stop his BS. Then, depending on your choices, it might become a flower bed or a statue of you using a lighter because you used it to scare those 15th century kids out of their minds. Psst, did you notice the color scheme for each point in time is completely different, while Ike remains the same, wearing his green blazer with 4 belts, one loose cause he's not uptight. A little conceited though.
I feel so tired.
You can't be tired from something that simple. There's a lot of people out there whose lives are a lot tougher. Well, like me.
Considering this is, for the most part, a linear game with a few endings to pick, the things you can do are really limited. But at the time, this was pretty cool. A novelty for sure, but something that I think could be really expanded upon now. Obviously, I don't want to get too much into what happens with the narrative, as that's the entirety of a mystery game, just like a Danganronpa, but Shadow of Destiny's multiple endings all tie together to make one heck of a weird, enjoyable, and maybe kind of dumb narrative. Some moments have that oh snap feeling, while others are like,
is this girl like your, you know?
No, it's not anything like that.
What? Most of the gameplay consists of going from point A to B or using an item at the right time, so in that case, it's pretty average. It relies on its plot and characters to sell the package, but that can get a bit goofy or weird at times, especially when the narrative's like, let's introduce more supernatural stuff. It's easy to understand. Fun gamer fact. Shadows of Destiny was written and produced by Junko Kawano, one of the lead designers on Suikoden 1 and 2, and Suiko 2 is the bomb. Both this and her spiritual successor to Shadows, Time Hollow, would come out to middle-of-the-road reviews. I think one of the biggest issues with it was the lackluster voice acting, making a lot of the dramatic moments feel comical. Sometimes a character's earnest response to something might sound like sarcasm.
And I'm grateful that you gave me another chance at life.
Despite its flaws and extremely short length, I think that Shadows of Destiny is worth a look. It has such a cool, unique concept. The narrative does its best to grab your attention, and while it might not have been a showstopper, it is something that I think would be cool to revisit. Like the concept. Like someone try this again. I'm just gonna leave you with this.
A woman? Don't know anything about that.
Happy New Year and decade, my goobs, and thank you so much to Mr. Novaforce for requesting Shadow of Destiny. It was really fun to revisit, and I asked him why he wanted me to cover it, and he gave me a little thing. Shadow of Destiny was one of the few video games my father and I could sit down and both play together. And while we don't have a bad relationship by any means, we do struggle to find something that we both have common interest in. So that game was a rare gem that I remember playing with my dad and actively solving the puzzles together. There you go, Shadow of Destiny bringing people together. Actually, that same exact thing happened with Shenmue and my mother. She would always be like, where are the sailors at? Where are the fucking sailors, Austin? Where are the sailors? Anyways, I've been Austin, and let's move into 2020 together, a whole new decade as gamers, together as gamers. That was too many words.
Thank you all so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to Alfredo Arellano, Brandon Howell, Christopher Olivia, Cliff Bro, Donald Dowdy, David Molnar, Eli Shane Staufenekar, Flaming Fighter, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Irrational, Jay Roos, Josh Garbage Lord, Legend Gary, Nitron, Plasma Phoenix, and Vlad Lust. Thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year. Thanks for watching. 2020 is gonna be a big year. I'll be releasing a vlog of my travels here pretty soon, and another video in a couple weeks. Then let's try something a little different. See you soon.